The Story of Bold Girl, Solver of Problems. Once there was, and once there wasn't, when Allah's creatures were many, and it was a sin to talk too much, time and time. Well, in those times there were two sisters. These sisters had neither father nor mother, but lived by themselves, and they were poor. They had almost no food to eat, they were so poor. One day, Bold Girl, the elder of these two sisters, said to the younger sister, "This won't do at all. At least let me get you married to someone, and then I can live on what you may have." So she put on her karsa and went out. She looked here and there, but she could not find anybody who was fit to marry her sister. Finally she came to a great big house with a black door. The door was black, and the curtains were black, and everything else in sight was black. It was a very strange sort of place. There were some children playing there, and Bold Girl asked, "Whose house is this?" They said, "It belongs to the Padishah, of course." "Why is it all black?" she asked. "Oh," said a child, "they are mourning because they had a son and he is lost, so they are mourning for him." As Bold Girl opened the door and walked into the house, one of the servants stopped her, saying, "Where are you going?" Bold Girl said, "I want to see the lady of the house." "How can you go in without asking permission? You wait here and I'll ask the lady." The servant asked the lady, and the lady said, "All right, let her come in and let's see what she has to say. Don't break her heart, let her come in." So Bold Girl was admitted and taken to the lady's room. A room all black. The walls were black, the bedstead was black, the door was black, the curtains were black, the covers were black, and the woman was wearing black and crying into a black handkerchief. "Salam alaikum," said the woman. "And alaikum assalam," the girl answered. "Who are you?" Bold Girl said, "Well, we are two sisters and live together as orphans, and we are very, very poor, so I decided to find someone to own us. I have come out and looked around on my left and on my right, and I haven't been able to find anyone. And what is your problem, my lady? And why do you cry, and why do you mourn, all dressed in black?" "Don't open my wound," said the woman. "Let's forget all about it. Nothing can be done about it." "Oh, no," said Bold Girl. "Maybe we can do something about it. Tell me, please." "Well, all right," she said. "This is my story. I had a son, 18 or 19 years of age. He was the apple of my eye, and he got sick. We cared for him. We did everything for him, and he was still sick. We had the palace doctor, who took care of him, and one morning we woke up, and he wasn't there. We don't even know whether he died or whether he just disappeared. We don't know what happened. How could you take it?" "Well," said Bold Girl, "suppose I find your son for you. Would you marry my young sister to your son?" "Oh," said the lady of the house, "how I wish you could. Of course I would. I promised that I would take her into the palace, and I would marry her to my son. I wish you could find my son for me." Bold Girl said, "Allah is great. Let us see what he'll show us." The lady of the house gave her some money to help them a little, and then Bold Girl left the palace. She went home and talked to her sister. She was a very, very clever one, this Bold Girl. She said to her sister, "Listen to me. I have a plan. If it works, it is going to be very, very happy for you in the end. This is what you are going to do. I'm taking you to the cemetery tonight just after dusk. There's a great big tree there. You are going to climb high up in that tree, and you'll watch everything that happens down below. Take care not to fall asleep, because if you fall asleep, then you'll fall out of the tree, and nothing will come out of our planet except that you may die. So you'll be very careful not to go to sleep, and you'll be very careful to look out, to watch what happens all night long. And in the morning you'll come down and tell me all that happened during the night." The younger sister was no child any more. She was at a marrying age. Bold Girl took her just after dusk to the cemetery, and helped her up into the tree, and once again told her to be careful not to fall asleep. Bold Girl went back home, but the young sister stayed up in the tree and watched carefully to see what was happening. After midnight, while she was sitting there, she heard the footsteps of a horse coming. Tucker, 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 tucker. And there was a man on the horse with a torch in his hand. He came right to the foot of the tree in which the girl was riding, and he got off the horse and began to dig at the grave right under the tree. And out of the grave came a young man. The man who had come on the horse had some dinner leftovers, and he poured them on the ground in front of the young man. The youth ate, as eat he must, and then the man said, "Will you be with me?" The young man said, "No." So the horseman took his whip and beat the poor boy. Then he pushed him into the grave again and covered it and rode away on his horse. In the morning the younger sister came down from the tree and told Bold Girl everything she had seen and heard. "Do you think this youth is their son?" asked the younger sister. Bold Girl said, "Perhaps. I'll go and talk to the lady about it." So she went to the palace to see the lady and told her the whole story. "I put my sister up in the tree, and I told her not to fall asleep. After midnight there came a horseman riding, tucker, 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 tucker. He was a tall, blond man, and he had a torch in his hand. He came and dug the grave with his hands, and a very, very thin youth, thin as a crescent moon and dark of skin, came out of the grave. The horseman poured out some leftover food, pieces of bread and scrapings from plates, and ordered him to eat. He ate as he could, and then he was asked whether he would be with him. When the answer was no, he was beaten and beaten and beaten with a whip, and pushed into the grave again, and the horseman went away, tucker, 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 on his horse again. Do you think the youth in that grave could be your son? Don't you want to come along with us tonight and see for yourself?" "Oh, yes," said the mother, "I will do that." That night every precaution was taken. Soldiers were stationed in the direction the horseman was to come. The younger sister was up in the tree, and everyone was waiting. After midnight the horseman came again with a torch in his hand because it was dark in the graveyard. And what did they see? The horseman was the palace doctor. He came and stuck the torch into the ground, and dug and dug and dug at the earth and opened the grave. Out came the young man dressed as the son of the Padishah. They watched him, and as the horseman poured the leftovers, pieces of meat and pieces of bone and pieces of bread, and the Padishah saw his own son eating those leftover pieces of food, his heart bled for his son. When it came the right time, they began to whistle, and all the soldiers closed in on the horseman and captured him. They took the sick boy to the hospital, and they took good care of him. Every day Bold Girl came and asked about the health of the boy, and the mother kept on saying, "I remember my promise, don't worry." Finally the boy got well, and the promise was fulfilled. The younger sister and the son of the Padishah were married. "Now," said Bold Girl to the younger one, "I've found a fat tail for you. You can lick on it and eat and live on it, and forget about me. Don't even ask about me." Now Bold Girl started out to seek her own fortune. She went straight over hills and over dales, picking hyacinths and tulips all the way. She walked, how she walked, until at last she came to another city with a mansion large enough for a Padishah. "Oh," she said, "perhaps I can work here as a servant, and earn my bread and cheese." So she asked there for work. "I can work here if they want me," she said. The servants inside said, "There are already many servants here. We don't think they would want any more, but let's ask." "All right," said the cook, "let her in. She may help me by peeling onions and potatoes and stringing beans." So she was taken to the kitchen and worked all day long. She peeled potatoes and onions and cut them, and she cut the other vegetables, and she washed the dishes, and she scrubbed the bottoms of the cooking pots, and she put the shelves in order. She worked hard all day long. It seems it was the habit of the Padishah's wife to come down to the kitchen once a week. One day, when she got down to the kitchen, she saw everything spotlessly clean. She wasn't used to seeing the kitchen so nicely arranged and cleaned. "Look, look," she said. "Who has done this? Who is responsible for this?" And they said, "This new girl who is taking care of the kitchen has done it." "Oh, she must be very good," the wife of the Padishah said. "She's not going to work in the kitchen any more. She's going to come upstairs and be in my service. She will light the stoves and sweep the floors and clean the lamps." So Bold Girl left the kitchen, and she worked in the ladies' room. She lighted her stoves, and made her bed, and cleaned the floors. She did every sort of work upstairs. Now this Padishah and his wife had a son, but he was bewitched. He wouldn't eat anything. He wouldn't talk to anyone. He wouldn't do anything. He would just sit in his room and stare. He hadn't talked to a single person for years. One day the Padishah said to his wife, "Listen, wife, this girl is very active and she's very clever. She seems to be a very able person. Why don't we put our son's room in her charge so she will work in there? Perhaps she'll be helpful." One day she was carrying water upstairs in 2 buckets, and right at that moment the Padishah's son happened to be coming out of his room. When Bold Girl saw him coming out of his room, she pretended to slip, and she let herself fall down the stairs with her legs up and the water pouring all over her. She made a very funny sight, but all on purpose. And the prince, who hadn't laughed for years, couldn't help himself. He began to laugh. The good news was carried to the Padishah and his wife. "The prince has laughed! The prince has laughed!" "Well," said the Padishah's wife, "maybe you were right. Let's put her in his service. That may do some good for our son." They told the girl that from that day on she would be in charge of the prince's room, to light his stove and make his bed and attend to his orders or whatever else was to be done for him. She was to sleep in the same room too. She liked her new work. "It's much better this way," she said. And she started caring for that room. She cleaned it every day. She worked, and when it was night time she went to bed. They put a poor little mattress for her there on the floor, and she slept on it. The prince talked to himself, saying, "Now in addition to all else, I have to suffer this girl in here. How did this Bold Girl come into my life?" In truth, the prince was in love with the daughter of the Padishah of Fairies. There was a secret way out of his room, and every night he would go to his sweetheart after everyone else had gone to sleep. But from the day Bold Girl began to sleep in his room, he was unable to go visit his sweetheart. At last he couldn't bear it any longer, and he decided to go and visit the daughter of the Padishah of Fairies anyway. To make sure that Bold Girl was asleep, he took a big needle and stuck it into her flesh. She gritted her teeth and never made a sound, pretending she was asleep. After the prince had made sure she was asleep, he left. He lifted up one corner of the carpet and opened a trap door in the floor, and there was a stairway going down. He went tipper, 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 tipper down the stairs. The girl lifted up her head and saw where he had gone. Now the fairy Padishah's daughter was going to have a child. "Where have you been all this time?" she said. And he said, "Oh, don't ask me. I have Bold Girl with me. This is how it happened. She's working in the palace, and one day I saw her fall down the stairs with 2 buckets of water pouring over her and her feet sticking up in the air. It was a funny sight, and I wish I hadn't done so, but I laughed. They thought that she pleased me, and they ordered her to sleep in my room, and ever since she has been sleeping there." The fairy Padishah's daughter said, "I am about to have our baby, and I need help. Somehow we must find a midwife to help me." Bold Girl was listening, and when she heard this, she made herself look hunchback and ugly and old. She wrapped herself in heavy clothes and took a lantern in her hand and a stick, and she went around the palace to the entrance of the fairy Padishah's house. Just then, the Padishah's son came out of the house and saw this old woman. "Where are you going, old woman?" he said to her. She said, "Oh, I'm in a hurry. I have to deliver a baby. I'm a midwife, and this lantern is not bright enough for me to find my way there. And yet they're in a hurry. I have to get there." "Oh, you are a midwife?" said the prince. "My wife is going to have a baby too. Please come and deliver mine first." "How can I do it? They are waiting for me," she said. "Oh, please do come in and take mine first. I'll give you more money. Please come." Because she was all wrapped up in clothes, he could not recognize the old woman as Bold Girl, and took her in. He didn't know her, but the fairy Padishah's daughter knew her. What don't they know, those fairies? She gave birth to a very, very blonde, golden-haired baby son. And then she said, "My father and mother don't know anything about this baby, so I can't keep him here. You take this baby and let him be yours." "All right," said the old woman. "I have a younger sister, and she'll take care of this baby." She took the baby and went upstairs, putting the baby in her loose baggy trousers. Salvar. She stretched her legs by the doorsill, and she began screaming, "Help! Help! What sort of Padishah's house is this? The baby's already born and nobody knows anything about it. Help! Help!" And they all ran. They dashed to the doorsill, and there, true enough, caught in the salvar, was a beautiful newborn baby boy. "Oh, how nice!" they said. "Our prince has a baby son. What a happy event!" So they made a good bed for Bold Girl, and they put her in bed with the baby next to her. The fairy Padishah's daughter heard all this excitement, and what don't they know? She understood what was happening. She said to the prince, "That girl has saved me from a very hard spot. From now on you must be my brother and nothing more. Now go and get married to that girl. I give what is mine to her, and may it be halal like my mother's milk to her. Go then and marry the girl." So whether he liked it or not, he came back in, and in a wedding that lasted 40 days and 40 nights, he and Bold Girl were married. They ate and drank and had their wishes fulfilled. May we likewise have good fortune